So I'm sitting in this podcast studio in this building. It's a co-working space that I rent an office in. And I love this. And to get here every day, I ride a bike a little less than 5 miles from my house. And even though the city around me has gotten much better in building infrastructure lately, it's still generally pretty terrifying. It just drivers are are not considerate of cyclists in this area. And I tell you that because that is the metaphor that I want to use when I talk to you about the safety and the security around working with AI agents. And I think that now look, let me preface all this first before we get too deep, because I am not a security expert in any way. I'm not a security expert in any way. I'm just terrified of both AI in general and the destruction that it can do, and also kind of a little bit terrified by how innately I trust it, even though it's got way too much power in a lot of cases. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, because I think that we look at it a little bit wrong. Not everybody. I think there are some folks that are taking a really healthy approach to it, and that's sort of what I want to try to articulate here, is finding that healthy approach, because there are horror stories out there, and you've probably read them. All of these are from last year, but I mean, even just a few weeks ago, there was a story about an agent that took down a whole database and all the backups, and it took a long time to actually get all that information back. I mean, brutal stories. You know, it's just at an alarming rate that we just didn't hear about in years before AI was doing a lot of the both coding and DevOps on our behalf. And what I think is happening is that it is true. We keep asking for more, right? We're asking for more power, more autonomy, more access. We want to give agents more capabilities. And I mean, it's kind of this goofy, hypocritical space that we live in, especially as developers, right? We're like, it took a while to adopt it at first because you're like, well, it can't do my job as good as I can. And now it's starting to get better, and we're like, okay, cool. Why does it suck so much? Let's do it. Let's make it more powerful. Let's make it more powerful. It needs to be more powerful. But why is it so stupid and it depletes my database? It's like we can't have both of these things, and we're really pushing constantly for more capabilities. And my argument here is that it's not about safety. It's about risk. And okay, it's pedantic, like semantics, fine. But think about this spectrum here, right? Okay, so on one side, you give the agent total control. You give it all of your keys, you give it all of your accounts, you give it access to your one password. It can do anything. And then that's terrifying, right? You're not going to do that. I hope. That's one little thing goes wrong, and everything, like you are screwed, right? It's not a good idea. On the other hand, if you don't do anything, right? If you're like, I don't trust AI to do anything for me, well, you know, in some industries, that's probably going to be okay for a while. In the web and tech industries, it's probably not going to last too long. And so that's not really a realistic expectation either. So we probably need to be somewhere in the middle. So how do we do that? I want to think about this as sharing the road. And the way I'm thinking about this is that genuinely, like, it's not the agent's fault that we shouldn't trust the agent, right? The agent is not a person. The agent is a tool. It is a piece of software that was designed by humans, and it was designed to work the way that it works. It's how we built the thing. So it's not the thing's fault that it works the way that we designed the thing to work. It's like, it's not a driver's fault that there's a bicycle on the road, right? That's not the problem. Bicycles exist. Cars exist. It's a question of, what if we designed cars to go really fast in a society and a road structure that makes it pretty easy for them to cause a lot of harm in a short amount of time in a really, really easy way. Is that their fault? Well, yeah, I mean, it is, because they're humans and not AI agents, but let's let the metaphor stretch for just a moment. Because think about this. Okay, so let's use the same sort of spectrum here. Because on one side, all right, there's no rules. There's no rules, right? There's no lines on the street. There's no traffic lights. There's nothing. I mean, I think the anarchists in the room would be like, yeah, it probably would be fine, right? Yeah, maybe, probably not. Probably there's going to be a whole lot of people who get hurt. That sounds terrifying. And on the other side of the spectrum, if we want to make bicycling safer in a city, then should we ban the cars? Well, I mean, yeah, we could, but then the repercussions of that are just they're not realistic. At least not everywhere. Again, the answer is probably somewhere in the middle. So rather than taking one side or the other, right? We've got the road, we've got the cars, we've got the bikes. We need to design the system so that these things can move together in a way that helps them mitigate the risk of injury without significantly getting in the way of what we could call productivity, which is basically like, we don't want to slow a car down too much in getting from A to B, at least in a safe way, but we might need to sacrifice that at least a little bit to be able to optimize the safety of, and I shouldn't say optimize the safety, to balance and create the feeling of safety for the bicyclists and the pedestrians and runners and all folks who are adjacent to the vehicles on the road. So that can mean things like building protected bike lanes or physical barriers, where part of my route is actually, there's a bike lane, and then there are cones that are permanent, and then there's a parking lane, and so we're separated quite a bit from the traffic, and it's like, that's not a bad design. It is a little bit scary when you come up to an intersection because the cars can't see around the parked cars, but that's a whole other thing. And then like traffic light designs, the geometry of turns and all things like that, which really slow cars down a completely reasonable amount and make it way safer to be on a road alongside those cars. As it comes to AI agents, I think there's really two sides to this. So there's the LLM itself, right? There's that model that is non-deterministic, and you don't necessarily know what's going to come out of it. There is some degree of entropy that exists within that system. And then there's the code, and the code is deterministic. There is an input and there is an output. And I say the code here, but usually I'm meaning more like it's the API. You hit this endpoint with this data and this payload, this thing is going to happen. It's logical, it's deterministic. And we work with these things in different ways, but I think we've meshed them together, and it feels like, well, we can move really fast with the LLM, so they're all the same thing today, but they're not. They're not. And that's where I want to draw the line, is between these two systems. And I think if we do that effectively, we can build really strong systems where we can let agents do really cool and powerful things without the ability to destroy the universe. And so what that means to me is that you work with an agent, but all the agent can really do is propose something. And when you say yes, it doesn't get to be the agent that does the thing. It is the deterministic system that does that thing. And then, as a result, the agent just, like, it can't make, if it makes a mistake, it's on you, right? Because then it's up to you. You are, the buck stops with you, right? Like, you are the one who has to make the decision for the content to get in the database. Today, you give an agent keys and you can be like, yeah, it's fine to go write that post. But then if it goes and deletes the database because it had access to delete the database, that could happen for a million different reasons and could have happened in a million different ways. But the only way to really stop that, the only way to really, really, really stop that is to not give the agent the credentials to be able to do that very deterministic action in the first place. And so it looks like this, right? It's like, okay, so writing the code isn't the issue. It's the connection to and the destruction of data, or the leaking of keys, or whatever it may be. So it's essentially this. There's the agent that has it has to go through another system, is essentially it. It has to go through this API layer to do anything. And so all it can ever access is the API layer. And then you've got control over that. So if you're willing to build these things, and maybe we'll see more, either products get more robust, or we might see some people start to build in some sort of middleware for more of this control. I'm saying this on the fly, and I'm like, oh, that would be actually a really useful sort of product for that, if it existed. But the idea is that then the API is this control layer, and the human has to be in the loop to decide if something destructive is going to happen. And so if, for whatever reasons, an agent gets prompt injected or makes the wrong assumption and gets to a point where the instruction or the resolution is the agent thinking, I need to drop every table in this database. Okay, that seems wrong, right? Seems wrong. But if all the agent can do is hit proposal endpoints in an API, then, first of all, I would assume one of those proposal endpoints is not to drop every table in the database. You probably would not surface that ability in your API, I would think. Yeah. I mean, I was going to say, in a rare case, maybe in a rare case, let's just say for most of us, no way. Then it's just like, it's not in the agent's vocabulary. It's not an MCP tool call that is discoverable. There's just nothing to do. So in most cases, I think that agent's going to come back and be like, I can't do that thing. And so what if it gets injected and it gets prompted to leak keys, right? Well, what keys does it have? The only keys it has are the keys that can trigger a proposal from the deterministic API. But that deterministic API then sends that proposal to a human, and that human has a key that is different from the agent's key because the agent doesn't have the ability to approve a proposal. So you have these layers in place where prompt injecting an AI agent doesn't lead to leaking a bunch of keys that can actually do any real damage. Now, a lot of this is, I've been using this approach and it works really, really well. It's, you would think it's slow, but honestly, I spend so much time every day working with agents that are writing code. And the amount of times that I have to say yes, approving a permission for it to read a file because it thinks it needs to run some stupid Python script to examine a file is like, I'm doing that all day long, even though I'm telling it constantly to stop fucking doing that. It's not a big deal, right? It's you get the proposal and you say, does this information look good? We should be doing that anyways. So, to use a really bad metaphor here, right? You keep that freedom where the road is open. You keep that freedom where the agent can't do any harm. Let the agent run wild. Give it access to read anything that can get leaked and doesn't matter, right? Let it. It just doesn't matter. And the concrete, the guardrails, the bike lanes, like those things need to come in when the agent can cause real harm. And that's when you draw the line between the non-deterministic system and the deterministic system. And the reality is, like, these models are going to continue to get smarter, but this concept and that line and that barrier between non-determinism and determinism does not have to change. And so you change your question to change your relationship with AI. And so instead of saying, how do I make this AI reliable? You say, how do I draw the line and where do I draw that line so that the unreliability happens in a safe space? Ultimately, what I want you to say after you've put something like this in place is, I can trust my agent. I can trust my agent because I have designed the right space and the right ways of working for my agent. It doesn't matter how crazy it hallucinates. It is not going to be able to do anything destructive. And that is the foundation that I am using to build a personal agent platform and framework for standing up individual agents. And I got a lot more to share about that as I make some progress. I'm Sean C. Davis. I appreciate you all watching. See you next time.